morning, good evening, good night. It depends on where you're listening from, where you're watching from. The time zone situation still remains the same, where there are some countries who are 7 hours ahead of here in the United States, and there are some states in the United States that are ahead of my time, and definitely I understand that. Look, I'll be talking to my guest today about relationship, and he has this concept about transforming relationship into power. I'd like to know what that is, but it is important that we understand relationship from the perspective of power. I would want to suggest, and there are so many facets as it relates to relationship, and relationship is a very critical aspect of our lives as we are involved in several different types of relationship, be it platonic, intimate relationship, and relationship with family members. But we relate. That's who we are as human beings. So I'm gonna let my guest in, and we will have this conversation with you on Canute exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. Christian, how are you doing?
Hey, Dr. Canute, how are you?
I'm good. Christian, I love that name. How did you
Good.
get that?
It's actually a long story. It's a spiritual name somebody teacher gave me.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Okay, I I'd like to start off by asking, who is Christian? I want to know who you are, and could you do me a favor? Just pronounce your last name for me. Just tell me what your name is. Totally.
Yeah, the De La Huerta is how you pronounce it. I'm born in Cuba, so it's a Spanish
Oh, yeah,
name. And De La
yeah.
Huerta means of the orchard, of the garden.
Interesting, interesting. I love that. I love that. Who are you, though? Professionally, personally.
Yeah, I've been doing life coaching, executive coaching, doing retreats. I'm a published author. Um, I do coaching online now, post pandemic. Um, and I'm committed about empowering people and organizations as well, about helping people to get in touch with and expressing their highest and best qualities. And as you were saying in the intro, it's to have relationships that have a chance of working.
Yeah, yeah, and that's important. We all have relationships, and it's very much a critical part of us. I often say that we born, we go to school, we work, and we have relationships. Then we die because relationship is the whole aspect of our life. But what about your childhood? Your childhood relationship, 7, 8, 12.
Well, I was raised in Cuba for my first 10 years of life.
Yeah,
So I was raised in a communist country,
yeah,
for which I'm really grateful. There are a lot of things that we take for granted
yeah.
in developed and developing countries. Like, I live in the US as well as you do. And there's a lot of things we take for granted, not only like physical things and access to things, but education, freedom, all the rights that we take for granted here, freedom of expression, etc. Um, that it's not the case in everywhere in the world that you can count on that. Like in Cuba, if you can't just decide I want to go to college and study, blah blah blah. Um, it's not everybody gets to go to college, and not everybody gets to decide what they want to study, what they want to specialize in.
Yeah,
But the gratitude part is that like we learn to, when you don't have it, you learn to appreciate those things more.
yeah,
So I'm infinitely grateful that I got to live in the U.S. and that I get to live in the U.S. these days.
yeah.
Um, and just to give you a story that might give you a sense, when we were kids, and we had it better than most because my parents had friends who worked in foreign embassies. So once in a while, I would get a box of chiclets. You remember the little chiclets, the little tiny things?
Yeah,
So we, one of a large family, one of 9 kids.
yeah.
And so we used to like split the chewing gum between the kids and then like chew it all day. At the end of the day, we get a glass of water with just a little bit of water in the bottom, put our gum in it, and then add some toothpaste
Oh,
and stir it so it'd be minted the next day. And then, hide it from my mom. And we could keep it going for like a week, maybe 2 weeks until she found it and threw it out. uh, but it gives you, it's just a context, an understanding of
Yeah, yeah,
what's chewing gum to us in the
yeah.
US. It's a thing. You stick it in your mouth and you spit it out without even thinking about it.
Get another one if you may. Right? Yeah, yeah. Interesting. how many of us as children, we have all of our adversities in life. But some are more intense than others. But we grow past it eventually, and here to tell the story so that other children can understand. Hey, appreciate what you're having now, because hey, guess what happened? Not every child has what you're having, so it's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, Look, Christian, you talk about power and relationship, and very interesting. But we find ourselves in patterns of relationship that are self defeating. Why do we do that? Why do many of us do that? And you notice we said we, because it's not only about intimate relationship, platonic relationship. I'd like to extend it to that, and it's self defeating.
Totally self-defeating. And let's, I guess I'll focus, because the what I talk about and what I teach about, especially the around power, applies
Yeah.
to all relationships: personal, professional, parental, whatever. But I'm going to talk about romantic intimate
Right.
relationships,
Okay.
because I think that's where most of us
Mhm.
struggle with and give away our power.
Yeah.
And what happens, the reason that we sabotage ourselves is, like, subconsciously, because we're not even aware of what drives our behavior, and which is really tragic, because we can't do anything about what we can't see.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
if we have subconscious fears, that's a lot of which we decided when we were kids. We saw our parents get into a fight or get into an argument. Maybe one of the parents left,
Mhm.
and because of the pain that we experienced, or as kids, and the inability to understand what was really going on with them, we made choices like, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
um, because, and if we approach a relationship with that subconscious stuff, with the fears, I'm never going to get hurt again, I'm never going to be cheated on again, I'm never going to be left abandoned again. It's that's the subconscious drivers that have us sabotaging our relationships. And the way it works is, like, we have this deep longing for
Yeah.
for love and for companionship and for intimacy. So we, do this, you're like, come, 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 but then they start getting too close. It's, whoa, 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 don't get too close. And so it's a little bit like
Yeah.
mixed messages,
Yeah.
conflicted messages with life. And we end up attracting people and falling for people who are not a match. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're better, doesn't mean we're worse. We're just at different points in life. We have different values, we have different
Yeah.
interests, and maybe they're just not available. Maybe they live on the other side of the world or the other side of the country. Maybe they're already with somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just not there
Yeah.
emotionally. So
Hey.
subconsciously, we sabotage them and make sure that that relationship is not going to work,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the subconscious fear that we really kind of have an ambivalent yes no relation desire about having a relationship. But it's not a good strategy, because we end up ensuring the very same thing that we're trying to avoid, which is we're going to end up alone.
Yeah. Maslow talked about the hierarchy of needs, and at the at the bottom of the pyramid there, you realize physical gratification, including sex and food and so on. But let's look at it from the sexual context. Uh, do you think that it's all about, in many romantic relationship, a matter of sexual gratification, even without thinking about security of the relationship or security in general, safety in general?
I think that's a really good question, because we are driven by all these subconscious, and we could even say, animalistic, hormonal, chemical, biochemical changes in our heads.
Yeah.
So where do you draw the line? I'm not sure. But that there's a component of that, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And so, that's the way we're hardwired. And of course, we're just much more than animals. And of course, sexuality is not just about reproduction.
Right, right.
It's incredibly complex and can be profoundly beautiful and profoundly
Yeah,
spiritual, which, we
yeah,
can get into that whole other conversation about
yeah,
spiritualizing our sexuality and taking it to a higher
absolutely.
level.
Yeah,
Um, but it's a broad question, which also depends on where we are in a relationship to our sexuality. How accepting are we of it? And where we are in relationship to relationship, like what kind of relationships do we want to have?
Yeah.
Some of us are fine just having a sexual
Yeah.
relationship, and that's enough. That's what
Right.
we want.
Mm-hmm.
Others want the deeper sense of connection, that making love
Yeah.
implies. I
Yeah.
mean, just by using that word lets us know that there's something else. It's not just
Yeah.
about getting off, getting our needs met, not just about reproducing. We're really longing for a much deeper sense of connection,
Yeah.
which can be profoundly emotional and profoundly beautiful and profoundly spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. You know, giving away our power, selling our power, as it relates. But I love you to define power in the context of what you're talking about, right? Before you answer this question about the cost that of selling our power.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Canute, that most of us have confusion around power, what power is.
Yeah.
And then we have, again, a conflicted relationship to power because we've been conditioned to believe that power is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And one way we can talk about powers is agency, about expressing what we want and getting what we want in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, and again, very complex interactions that human beings develop around power, and a
Mhm.
lot of it comes from misunderstanding, and because of that condition that's taught, that tells us that power is a bad thing,
Yeah.
with quotes like "power corrupts" and "absolute power corrupts
Yeah.
absolutely." And who wants to be corrupted? Most
Yeah.
of us don't. We also fear like we might abuse it. And we also fear that if we really stepped into all of who we are, if we really stepped into our power, that other people might not be able to handle it, and that we might end up again rejected and alone and no fun. Who wants that? So when you put all that into the mix and you add to that the fact that we've also been conditioned to be afraid of the emotions,
Right.
somewhere along the way, somebody decided that the emotions were weakness, and particularly for guys.
Yeah.
Little boys don't cry since we were kids.
Right.
That's a really faulty assumption. The emotions aren't strength. They're not weakness. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just energy. Like everything else in creation and the cosmos, it's energy, even though it might even feel solid.
Yeah.
And so what happens when we put all that together is like we end up overriding our true feelings, our beliefs, our preferences, our dreams, and saying yes when sometimes it's a real no inside
Yeah.
of us. But
Right.
we're afraid of what
Mhm.
might happen if we really said what we're feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we end up giving away our power, and we end up settling for an illusion of security,
Yeah.
and for a false sense of acceptance, and for crumbs
Yeah.
of pseudo love, because it's not even real love if we're not presenting ourselves authentically.
Yeah.
So what this book talks about, awakening the soul of power, is like, how do we step into power, personal power, in a different way? Because what they didn't tell us about that quote about power corrupts
Hmm.
is that Lord Acton, the guy who said the
Yeah.
words, was speaking specifically about political power, not
Okay. Yeah.
personal power that you and I are talking about.
Right. Hmm.
So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we got confused, and we think, well, no, 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 no. And then we become these little wimps.
Yeah.
And we end up, when you put all those factors together, we end up settling for less,
Yeah.
playing small, hiding our real potential, our real desires, and overriding them. And it's not a good strategy.
Yeah.
So the book talks about how do we step into power in a different way. That's not about hierarchy, meaning like pushing somebody down
Hmm.
in order for me to feel powerful, putting our knee to their neck in order for us to feel powerful. How do we step into power in a way that's not about fear, about force, about control, about domination, about power over? How do we do it in a way that's power with? Because if I'm in my own power, I'm not threatened about anybody else being in their power. It's like I celebrate that.
Yeah.
And so we learn a different way to step into our power.
Yeah. As you talk, I reflect on gender as it relates to what you're saying, because in effect there is a man and a woman in the relationship, right? So how do they split power? Is it that there's an overriding situation as it relates to power and gender within that romantic relationship? Talk to me about that a little.
Oh my God, yeah. There's so much gender, such a big part of it, but again, all conditioned.
Mhm.
Because what like we're talking about, little boys don't cry. Well, what's the reason for that? Because only
Mhm.
little girls cry, and because the feminine is weakness. It's like, wait a minute, that's another faulty assumption. If you want
Yeah,
to talk about courage, strength, resilience, power, let's talk about the power of creation that resides in a female body.
yeah,
And so we've got these limited and very limiting definitions of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman,
mhm.
that are like, they really need to be upgraded, like, because they
Yeah,
don't serve us
yeah.
anymore. It creates a separation. It makes having relationships that work really, really difficult.
So there's a
Um,
power that you cannot take away from the female. It's specific to the female, based on what you're saying. And there's also a power on the other hand that you cannot take away from the male. It's specific to the
exactly.
male.
Yeah, it's inherent that
Yeah,
real authentic power, which I call soulful power, spiritual power,
yeah.
is inside each and every one of us, and it doesn't matter what gender.
Okay,
Like, we
okay.
all have access to that. And so I talk about different kinds of powers. For example, worldly power,
Hmm.
ego power, which is dependent. The ego power always is the way that most of us tend to think about power.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's about blowing itself up to seem much bigger than it is. It always has an agenda. It's always trying to grab something for itself. It's always trying to be like top dog, and it pushing everybody else down, because it believes in the lie that it's a limited sum game, so that you're having power threatens mine and takes away from mine. And again,
yeah,
that's a faulty
yeah,
it's a faulty assumption. It's just not real. If I'm in my power, like I said, I can
yeah,
handle anybody else being in their power. I can
mhm,
handle anything that comes my way when I'm
yeah.
in my power. And so here's another story it's really kind of funny, and I hope it doesn't
Yeah.
offend anybody
Okay,
in the
yeah.
audience. But Betty White, the actress who
All
died
right.
last year, apparently she was being interviewed in one of these multiple celebrity group interviews, and somebody
Right.
said something about having balls,
Yeah.
and she goes, "Wait just a minute. um, where do we get this connection about having courage and strength and power and balls? You
Yeah.
thump those little things, and the guy collapses, bends over in pain. You want to talk courage? You want to talk
Yeah.
strength? You want to talk resilience? Let's talk vaginas. Those
Yeah.
things take a pounding."
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. And that's important because this the psychologist will tell you about the female as it relates to taking in and the male giving, right? And sort of generate this sort of a concept as to power as well. And it speaks also to specific power as it relates to gender. But you know something? My thing as well is should we as men relinquish what we conceive as power to the female, because hey, if we continue to carry that sort of power and authority, I'd like to put them together, interchange, right? And if we continue to carry that power, the relationship will fail because some powers we should not take on, but it really belongs to the female to take control.
Yeah, I believe in power with, not
Yeah.
power over. and
Okay.
and so much of our conditioning, so much of our training is like, it's threatened. And
Yeah.
it comes, if you're threatened by somebody else having power, you're not feeling very secure in yourself deep down
Yeah.
inside. If you feel secure in yourself deep down inside, then of course you want to celebrate
Yeah.
anybody else, male or female, being in their power, because you can handle anything that comes your way.
Yeah.
That's a very different come from. And part of the problem is that we have been taught as men,
Hmm.
have very kind of twisted definitions of what it means to be a man. So you,
Yeah.
you we walk around like these uncaring, unfeeling robots, because somebody made up along the way that to have emotions is weakness, and to have emotions is only it's a feminine thing to do. But again, the feminine is very powerful, and the emotions are not strength and they're not weakness, so they're just mistaken understandings. And there's a price to pay for those, Dr. Canute,
Yeah.
because there's by going around like these uncaring, unfeeling robots, there's a health price to pay. What used to be spiritual teaching, that everything is energy, now we know from quantum physics that it's true. Everything is energy. This
Yeah.
chair that I'm on, the mic, the body, the emotions, even if it feels solid, it's vibration, it's energy. We know from physics, energy cannot be destroyed. So
Right.
all of those hundreds and thousands of times in our lives where we have stuffed our emotions, we have swallowed our emotions because little boys don't cry.
Right.
And women do this too, by the way. Not only men do this, we do it
Right.
more.
Mhm.
But women also stuff their emotions because we're afraid of conflict. We're afraid of
Yeah. Yeah.
confrontation.
Yeah.
And so what happens is those energies that we stuff, that we swallow, they just don't go away. They
Yeah.
get lodged in the tissues of our bodies, and after years and decades and a lifetime of suppressing emotions,
Mhm. Mhm.
there's a price to pay. Those emotions, they have to come out one way or the other. So what happens is we stuff them and we stuff them and we stuff them, and then the next poor unfortunate one says something to us the wrong way, and boom,
Yeah.
volcanic eruption causing harm to our
Yeah.
relationship.
But hypothetically, I am the man. So
Exactly.
so I need to have this power over you because you are the weaker sex. Where that comes from? Do
That's
you think that
twisted.
that is being so prevalent that we cannot get rid of it?
That's twisted. But let me finish the other thought because it's really important for men specifically. The
Mhm.
other thing that happens if we stuff our emotions is they start showing up
Yeah.
and seeping out and ending up as physical symptoms,
Yeah.
disease, heart
Mhm.
attacks,
Yeah.
ulcers,
Mhm.
cancer. And
Yeah.
that's why the men live shorter lives. Like women in the US live 5 years longer than men do on the
Oh.
average.
Yeah. They have life
Globally,
expectancy. Yeah.
globally, it's 7 years. Let's
Yeah.
look at the rate of suicide. Men commit suicide 4 times as frequently as women do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that like 70% of all suicides in the US are committed by middle-aged white men, which is
Yeah.
a really interesting number because that's the group, I think, pretty inarguably, that
Yeah.
still holds the majority of the power in the world. So they should
Yeah.
have better, longer lifetime. They should
Yeah.
have better access to healthcare.
Mhm.
All the benefits and privileges of being the group that has the majority of power, but
Yeah.
yet they take their lives more frequently. And I think it's because what we're talking about,
Yeah.
this limiting definition of what it means to be a man. And
Yeah.
because we pay a price for stuffing our emotions and for like, look at this. Of course, it doesn't make you any less strong or any
Yeah.
less of a human being or any less of a man to have emotions and to cry. It's a
Yeah.
human thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say this, but you are doing it now. I am doing it by facilitating you who have the expertise. But how do we continue to re-educate men as it relates to the definition of power and the what I'd like to call the exertion of power, the correct power? How do we continue to do this?
Yeah,
What?
Dr. Canute, we have our work cut out for us. And that's what we need to do, right? Educate
Yeah.
about what power is, what power isn't.
Mhm.
Educate the effect,
Yeah.
the power games that we play with each other in
Yeah.
relationships. Because if we're stuck in power games in relationship, they're not going to work. We're going
Yeah.
to end up hurting each other, which is the reason that majority of relationships end up in divorce.
Yeah.
So we need to educate ourselves about how to approach relationships, and do whatever work we are guided to do to really accept and learn to love ourselves. The
Yeah.
stronger our sense of self, the less that we need anybody's validation,
Yeah.
the less that we get stuck in these patterns of giving away our power. We get very clear about what we want, what we don't
Yeah.
want, what we
Mhm.
like, what we don't like. We learn to set healthy boundaries in
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah, that works for me. No, that doesn't
Yeah.
work for me.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
learn to communicate all these things. And once we learn how to do that, we're actually owning our power without, without, we're not stuffing it down anybody's face.
Right.
We're just saying, hey, if you want to be in a relationship, this is what I want. Like if we can meet there, great. But if not, I love you, have a great life, but this is not going to work. This kind of behavior, this kind of relationship pattern is not going to work for me. And it's some of these conversations are hard, and
Yeah.
getting to the point of being able to say that takes some work, but it is
Yeah.
so worth it.
Yeah. I won't call any names, but there's a something I read, and it's in the media, but I won't even repeat it here. But this politician has been married for about 29 years, and he and his wife decided to call it a day. We're separating, but not divorcing. We've been living in the same home, but we are allowed to date different other people, right? You know, how that equates to power, or power involved there.
It's interesting, and I think you're talking about the New York politician.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It's in the news.
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to. I'd be making it up because I don't know what's going on in the relationship. So
Right,
I don't
right,
know if there's a power struggle between them. I don't know. I don't know if there
yeah,
was any betrayal. I don't know if they just got used to each other.
right.
Um,
It was said
and
that they're growing. That you know, the reports that they're growing out of love, growing out of yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and and that happens to a lot of people, but that's also a misunderstanding about what love is. And we tend to confuse that this, the initial falling in love phase where the other person can do no wrong, and we see them only through rose-colored
yeah,
glasses until, especially after 6 months, 9 months, a year. And if you move in together, then it happens more quickly because
yeah.
at some point they're gonna put the squeeze the toothpaper from the wrong
Right.
end, or
Yeah,
they're gonna do the
yeah,
toilet paper thing. They, like, we all should know that this is the right way. They're gonna do
right,
it the
right.
other way, and
Yeah,
then that's it, right? The rose-colored glasses fall off, and then that person can do nothing right, and then we fell
yeah,
out of love.
yeah.
And Dr. Scott Peck, who wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled,
Right. Oh yeah, I know that.
gives us a beautiful definition, a different way of looking at love. That love is not the feeling, love is not that emotion, which is
Yeah,
great. So
yeah,
enjoy it when you have it. Um, but it's fickle, right? That's the part that may not last. Although there are some people that say that 30 years later they still feel in love.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
what the way that he defines love is more like an action. Love is a verb. So, not the feeling, because love doesn't always feel good. Like, think about disciplining a child. No, that's enough cake, right? You can't have any more ice cream. Or, no,
Yeah,
you can't walk into that busy street. It's for their own good, but it doesn't feel good because the kid's gonna throw a tantrum, and it's hard to say no to a kid.
right,
Um,
you're right. Hmm.
so love is an act where we do something for somebody else, and we have to stretch,
Yeah,
and sometimes it doesn't even feel good, but we're doing it for their good, for their highest good.
yeah. But you know, love as this multifaceted definition. It depends also on the individual. I think it's more relative than absolute because you and I might define love differently, right? And exert
Yeah.
love differently because of our mindset, because of how we define love, right? You
Yes.
might hypothetically you might decide that okay, if I take a bouquet to my wife, it suggests that I love her. I may say no. If I cook for her, bouquet won't work. You know, or if I just say I love you and do nothing more, then that's love. So you know, I'm not sure. I want your opinion on that because they're different. It depends on the individual. Would you say?
Yeah, and I think you're referring to the love languages, and I
Right, the
forget.
love language.
There's a book
Okay,
written
right.
about that. I
The
don't
love
know if it's
language.
four or
Right.
five of them, but yeah, we express our love differently.
Mm.
And if we don't understand that, then we may not we may not understand that some people need to say it or need to receive it, and they need to
Right.
hear, "Hey, I love you." Some people don't really care about hearing it, but they need the physical touch, they need the cuddling, the hugging, the kissing. Some people need, like, if you give them a gift, then that's a sign of love. Some people that's how a lot of people communicate love, by
Right.
giving other people stuff or doing stuff for others, like, and so we also, that's part of what we need to educate ourselves about, so that our
Yeah.
relationships have a chance of working. We may be speaking different
Yeah. I
languages.
love that. Right. Because we need that compromising, right? Compromisation there.
Yeah.
Because people are different. And you're talking about power in relationship. It's a very critical, very important aspect of relationship because we have misdefined power, right, in relationship. You have said it, and we have misunderstood it. But okay, take for instance, this couple listening to us now say that okay, we have been doing it wrong for years. Maybe you have alluded to it. How do we now get it right?
Well, you educate yourself. I mean, I don't whether you buy my book and read the book,
Yeah,
or sign up for a coaching session with a relationships counselor.
right.
But we need to educate ourselves. Not only about how to approach relationships and what our expectations are,
Mm,
and like the kind of discussion that you and I are having, like how do
right.
you understand love? What makes you feel loved, right? Because if I know that bringing you flowers or bringing you a gift, even if
Yeah,
it's a small gift, you feel loved, then I know that once I know, then that's how I'm going to do it. But if I know that what you need to hear is I love you, then I'm going to try to do that. So a lot of it is communication and learning to know each other, learning about a lot of the subconscious drivers.
right.
Like we have to be willing to do some of this work that we're talking about,
Yeah,
which is courageous. We got to be willing to go inside and ask some of these hard questions about what makes us do the things we do.
yeah,
Why am I so afraid of making a commitment? Why are some of us relationship phobic or
right.
commitment phobic? What's really going on? And by running away from it or medicating it, which is what
Mm,
most of us end up doing with all the creative ways that we self-medicate so that we don't feel
yeah,
loneliness or pain or fear or whatever it is that we're trying not to feel,
yeah,
with drugs or alcohol or food or sex or
yeah,
social media or gaming or sometimes even exercise. All those things can be used to numb out and not feel. But again, the
yeah,
stuff that we're trying to run away from is not going to go away on its own. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to fester and
yeah,
get worse under the surface. So at some point, you're going to have to, face yourself and
yeah,
ask those hard questions
yeah.
if you want to have a relationship that has a chance of working.
Mhm.
And once we're willing to do that, um, then we start attracting people who are actually available,
Right.
and rather than and then our relationships again begin to have a chance of working.
Yeah. And before I go into your book, look, this thing about cognitive dissonance in psychology, it speaks to your behavior is being forced, in conflict with what you think, your mindset, your attitude towards a particular thing, right? Take for
Yeah.
instance this carrying flowers thing, this carrying a gift to your partner. If that's not your mindset, that's not your attitude, that's not something you believe in, but you are forced to do it because that's what she loves, right? And cognitive dissonance is that discomfort that you feel when you behave against what you believe in. I'm saying this to ask you, how does that affect relationship and the existence of power in the relationship? Because this guy can say, hey, I don't believe in that, you love it, I don't believe in that, so you're not getting flowers, I just don't bring it because I don't believe in it. Talk to me.
Well, that would be a pretty limited, view of things. If your partner or your spouse loves something, then of course you want to, even if
Yeah,
it's not your thing, of course you want to do something for them or bring what they want because
right.
you love them.
Yeah,
And that's part of what makes a relationship work. And a lot of it is compromise. Like, yeah, I may
yeah,
not like this type of movie, but we're not always going to go see this type of movie I like. So sometimes we go see your type of movie. Sometimes we go see my type of movie. And that's what makes, sometimes we go for Chinese food, sometimes we go for barbecue,
yeah,
right? So
compromise.
we've gotta be willing to average things out and to compromise so that everybody feels valued.
Yeah,
Because if it's only one getting what they want, the other person's going to start feeling unvalued,
yeah,
unloved, resentful, and that's not going to work because
yeah,
resentment's only it's going to result in a power struggle, which aren't
yeah,
always clear, right? That the clear way is like, you're going to do it my way.
yeah,
But
yeah.
then the unclear, the kind of the subconscious power struggles, well, oh yeah, just wait,
Mhm.
just wait, right? And then we end up doing things like passive aggressiveness.
Oh yeah,
That's a power game.
yeah,
Um, and here's a great example of it.
mhm,
I'm watching TV and my spouse or my partner is like in the other room, like,
yeah,
hey, can you come help me in the kitchen? And it's like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes.
mhm,
10 minutes later, hey, can you come help me in the kitchen? Yeah, yeah, I'll be right there. Well, I'm channel surfing. That's passive
mhm.
aggressive. surface.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like, I'm really saying y'all be there, but deep down inside, I'm really saying, screw you.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
watching TV and I'll go there when I'm good and ready.
Yeah,
Or here's another example of that. Oh, not tonight, honey. I have a headache.
yeah, yeah.
Right? That's what we're saying, but deep down inside, under the surface, I mean, maybe maybe we really do have a headache, but
Yeah,
I think more than likely we're saying, oh yeah, hell is gonna freeze over before you get any tonight,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's another power struggle.
yeah,
So
yeah,
to me, it's worth it to do the work. It's worth
yeah,
it to speak things clearly. It's worth it to negotiate things.
yeah,
And part of it, to be able to negotiate, we have to be really clear ourselves about what we want and what we don't want, what we like and what we don't like.
yeah,
If we're not even clear ourselves, like, that's the first step, and understanding why we do the things we do.
yeah,
So again, if we have those subconscious fears about relationship, about getting cheated on, about getting hurt, getting abandoned, and we are bringing that in our mindset and those fears into the relationship,
yeah,
it's going to show up at some point.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. You're listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White, talking to Christian. Christian, as an author, talk to me. Your book.
Yes. The most recent book I wrote, is called Awakening the Soul of Power. And it talks about everything that we're talking about.
Yeah,
Like, how do we step into power in a different way? So the power with rather than the power over. And it talks about, all these gender issues that we're talking about. It's for everybody, because everybody has issues around power. But it's has a particular message for women, and for women's empowerment, because I believe that the empowerment of women is the single most important thing that needs to happen in
yeah,
the world. It's
yeah,
not to idealize women. It's not to put women up on a pedestal. Women also abuse power
yeah,
in different ways, mostly. Um, and it's certainly not to give women more crap that they have to do to clean
yeah,
up this mess that we have all created on this planet of ours. It's because as a world, as a species, we've been running so off balance, so off kilter between the masculine and the feminine energies, which, by the way, course through all of us, no matter what kind of body we're in.
right.
Because masculine and feminine energies go through all of creation,
Oh, yeah,
through the entire cosmos, in balance. It's only in our heads that the feminine is weaker than the masculine.
yeah,
That's not in the
definitely. I
rest of
agree.
creation. That's not the case. They're
Yeah,
equal, and they balance each other, and they complement each other. And so I believe that when women are in 50% of power, we don't want to go
yeah,
back to a matriarchal,
yeah,
system where women are more powerful than men.
I
That's not going to
agree.
work either.
Right, yeah,
What we need is balance,
balance.
and that balance has to come from us first, from each one of us, and we got to stop denying the feminine and turning the feminine into weakness, into something less than, because it's not.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I believe that when women are in 50% of power, we're going to have a very different relationship to war and
yeah,
poverty and hunger and social justice and education and how we treat the environment, to all of it.
definitely.
And so for me, it's like strategic thinking. All right, what is one thing that we can do that is going to impact all of these problems that we're facing?
Yeah,
And what I land on personally is the empowerment of women. And
yeah,
again, this is not to leave men behind. Like, I'm a guy. I like, they gotta. I like being a man.
yeah, yeah,
So it's
definitely.
not knocking men. It's not making men wrong. It's more the system,
Yeah,
this patriarchal system of power over,
yeah,
um, which also impacts the way that we relate to the planet. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to rape and pillage the planet. I'm going to take from the planet whatever we need,
yeah,
without even regard to our own survival. And we're just now beginning to witness what we have unleashed on the environment. Like
yeah,
yesterday was the day, was the hottest day in all of recorded history.
yeah,
And that's not the last time we're going to hear that.
yeah. I know, right? I sat here and I listened to you as you talk about the gender aspect of things, and well, I'm involved in research, being a PhD, but look, there's this thing about research as it relates to masculinity. Yeah, a lot of men usually, you know, they are used to doing research. But women comes into the fold now and start to do research and have this feminism touch to it, and they think differently. The result, the interpretation of the results are different, and therefore it creates a sort of a challenge in how we see the theories in academia, because women interprets it differently from men, and there need to be a compromisation and an understanding from a gender point of view. I'm saying this because it also relates to power, as it relates to how we interpret things differently in terms of gender, even though we went and we get the same data.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about that part of it, about the
Right.
differences in research between the genders. I know there's some brilliant
Yeah.
female researchers in all sorts of sciences. I mean, the numbers are nowhere near 50-50, not only in
Right.
terms of political leaders, but also in terms of our scientists.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we need to balance and that we need to correct.
Yeah.
And learn about each other. Like what I think what we need all of us.
Mhm.
All of us right now. We can't start choosing about, focusing on the differences. We got to focus on what we can do together, because we've got some serious challenges that we're facing.
Mhm.
And so we need to, we're going to see things differently. We're going to
Yeah.
problem solve differently. We need all of us at the table. And I think about this in terms of race as well. We think about different races.
Mhm.
Like, our DNA, Dr. Canute, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, is almost identical. Your DNA and
Yeah.
mine it's like 99.999% identical.
Yeah.
In fact, our DNA, human DNA, is 98.6 identical to
Yeah.
chips. And we share 50% of our DNA with bananas.
Yeah.
Identical. So we're all interconnected, and there's not enough difference between us to consider it a different race. We're like one human race.
Oh yeah.
And so that's the kind of thinking that we need. We can't be focused on the difference, and I'm male and you're female and you're this and I'm that. We don't have time for that. We got to
Oh,
like come together and tackle these really, really serious problems that we got going on.
yeah. How do we change that though? Because look, I grew up in Jamaica, and during my childhood, I realized that the dogs and the cats, they were always fighting. The cat see the dogs, the dog would rush him and bite him, so on. When I became an adult in my adolescent stage and getting into adulthood, that doesn't happen anymore. I see the dog and the cat. Trust me, it's interesting that I'm saying this. I see the dog and the cat loving each other. The cat. Oh, it's always puzzled me how that transformation happened just like that. You know, interestingly, and it tells me that you talk about this thing as it relates to gender and how we need to come together. Can that happen naturally, or is it that we are socializing our children to continue that disparity, that you think this way, I think that way, and there's no compromise?
Of
What
course,
are we doing wrong, you and I?
all that stuff is learned. We're not born misogynist or sexist
Right,
or homophobic. We're not born racist. We learn that.
right.
And so we have to unlearn that and teach
Yeah,
our kids and the next generations to not be ruled by these superficial differences. They're so superficial.
yeah,
These differences around belief. It's like, who cares? Like, what I call the theological pissing contest. My God is bigger than yours. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
really? Like, who
yeah,
cares? To
yeah,
me, like the sacred, the divine, whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
is not petty. It's
yeah,
not a judgmental, micromanaging, favorite, parent who
yeah,
favors some kids over others. No, it's unconditional love all around.
yeah.
And so yeah, you can learn to develop a connection with the divine this way or that way or that way. And
Right.
again, if I have my connection in place, why would I be threatened about your relationship with the God or the sacred? That's your relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
clear about mine.
yeah, Yeah, important. Interesting that you said that. Before we end this conversation, your business, apart from your book, are you doing something else to empower others? Do you have a business going on, entrepreneurial aspect of things?
Yeah, I do. I've been doing retreats and workshops and coaching for over 30 years.
Mhm,
Um, I'm just now starting to do live events again after the pandemic.
mhm,
So um, I do both. Now I'm starting to do the live, you know, group things and private one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. I do weekend retreats, week-long retreats. I take people to beautiful places like Hawaii or Ecuador or Egypt, but always with a spiritual theme. So it's sort of
yeah,
like if a vacation and and a retreat got married and had a child. So it has a little bit of both.
right.
And now I'm also doing virtual online coaching. I have a year-long coaching program that walks people through all these things that we're talking about: how to develop a stronger sense of self, how
Mhm,
to transmute, transform self-doubt into self-confidence, how to relate to power in a different way, um, becoming aware of why we do the things we do, so that our relationships have a chance. So
mhm,
it's a year of transformation that I we have coaching calls with me every 2 weeks
mhm.
on Zoom. And yeah, if anybody wants to find out more about my work or my books, the title of the book is Awakening the Soul of Power. And my website is soulfulpower.com. SOULFULPOWER.com.
Yeah, interesting, and I love that. And these guys, what people said about Christian and his work. Those persons listening on your favorite podcast platform may not be able to see it. I'm going to put Christian on the spot here because these are what persons are saying about you. Those who cannot see it, I would love you to perhaps read it. I attest to that persons have said it. Would you mind reading for me, Christian, if you can see it from there?
Yeah, it says my Christian De La Huerta, my experience breathing with you was transformative and profound. I
Right,
highly recommend it.
right. Yeah.
And
And read this one, and then there's another one.
this is from Jamis Stefanik, saying, "You have helped me remember things in myself that I forgot a long time ago. With your truth and grace, I can honor myself and others."
Right. And there's another one, the final one that I downloaded.
Thank you for doing this, Dr. Canute.
That's all
Uh,
right.
of all the ways I've learned to traverse life and change, soulful breathwork with Christian De La Huerta has been the most transformative.
Yeah,
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 it's powerful work, and
yeah,
and and that's why I do the work that I do, because it changed my life. Like,
yeah,
my entire adolescence was one long depression.
yeah.
I had
Oh,
suicidal fantasies.
yeah,
I know self-doubt. I know self-hatred,
yeah,
and I know how to get out of it. So I
yeah,
can guide people out of that and change the relationship with themselves first,
yeah.
because that's what's got to change first before any other relationship can work.
Hey, hey, Christian, you're super, right? I love what you have been doing, and continue to do the good work. And I'm hoping that we'll talk again, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot to say. We are out of time, but I I have the passion that you have, and I will give you all the support here from.
Thank you so much, Dr. Canute, and thanks so much for having me on the show. And thank you for having the show. In
Thanks.
your willingness to do that, a lot of lives are being
Yeah,
changed and touched and transformed. So thank you so much for that.
thank you, Christian. I appreciate it. That was Christian, and you heard him, and his passion for transforming relationship into power. Or in other words, sort of redefine power in relationship. Give it a positive tone so that you can have a meaningful and effective, efficient relationship. And Christian, I think that we as men, in particular, need to be re-educated so that we can understand the concept of power and relationship, and that we have this compromise aspect of relationship that we need to tap into, how we need to compromise and forget this gender disparity, and work together in order to move forward as one. And he has said a lot, and in the description of this episode you will see his website link, and other ways, means in which you can connect with Christian. I really appreciate what he has been doing, and you will benefit from what Christian has been doing. Give him a link now, contact him now, and hear what's going on, or he can help you in terms of coaching, or he can help your organization, your family. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. Goodbye.